We've been taught that in order to achieve something, we must really want it and even need it. But what if the opposite is actually true? What if detachment is a necessary component of success? And what if there's a difference between healthy detachment, which helps us achieve our goals, and unhealthy detachment, which just removes our goals altogether? But before we get to the difference between healthy detachment and unhealthy detachment, let's first start by talking about the problems with attachment. When we attach our happiness and even our self-esteem to external factors like outcomes, for example, our happiness and our self-esteem becomes dependent on those outcomes or external factors. The problem is that external factors like outcomes are outside of our control. So we end up feeling like our happiness is outside of our control. And we end up having a self-esteem that isn't rooted in the self. In other words, it's not self-esteem. Some people actually call this pseudo self-esteem, which is a fake version or a false version of self-esteem. As a result of all of this, it's difficult, if not impossible, to achieve inner peace, which leads to constant anxiety. And likewise, a lack of self-esteem leads to depression, among other things. This is why many wise people throughout the years have criticized attachment. For example, Bhagavad Gita said that attachment leads to suffering, and more famously, the Dalai Lama said that attachment is the origin, the root of suffering, hence it is the cause of suffering. Now, I'm not saying that we can remove attachment altogether, or that is even healthy to remove attachment altogether. For example, a certain level of attachment is not only natural and necessary, but also good in your relationship with your significant other. There is also a difference between unhealthy detachment and healthy detachment. Because as I'm sure you might be thinking right now, you can't just detach from the world altogether. We must embrace reality. But while we embrace reality, we can have a healthy level of detachment from outcomes and other things outside of our control. There are many differences between unhealthy detachment and healthy detachment. Unhealthy detachment means not caring and becoming indifferent, whereas healthy detachment is letting go of trying to control outcomes. So instead of obsessing over the results, we focus on the process. Instead of obsessing over the future, we embrace the present moment. Instead of being scared to fail, we courageously step into uncertainty. It's not about abandoning or denying your desires. That is unhealthy attachment. Healthy detachment is about freeing yourself from the suffering that comes with too much attachment or attachment to the wrong things. So you don't abandon what you want, rather you let go of how it should come to you or that it should come to you at all. You focus on enjoying the process and becoming comfortable stepping into the unknown. Like anything else, being able to embrace the unknown is a muscle. You get better at it the more that you do it. Now, that being said, facing the uncertain will never be easy all the time. Because of the way we are wired as humans, we have a certain need for certainty and predictability so that we can stay alive. And facing the uncertain is always going to have some level of difficulty. That's why it's a good idea to remind ourselves that oftentimes the best way to receive is to let go of the expectation to receive. That is the paradox of detachment, or in other words, the paradox of letting go. Oftentimes, the more you let go, the more you receive. When you detach from the outcome, you're more present, you're more open, and you're less burdened by fear. And you make better decisions because you're more present in the here and now. You are more attuned with reality, and you act with more courage because you're less burdened by fear. Like, for example, the fear of loss or the fear of failure. Also, when we detach our egos from the outcome and we love ourselves despite of the results, attaching our self-love and our self-esteem to our intentions and our effort and our work instead of the results, which are out of our control, we are more likely to operate from a place of calmness and inner peace. Think about it. How many times have you received something in your life when you stopped looking for it or when you least expected it? This is certainly true in relationships because people can smell the neediness off of a person and they can be put off by that. But it's also true in many areas of our life. It's like that old saying goes, the need for anything gets in the way of everything. But detachment isn't just a philosophical concept, it is also a practical tool. Whether it's in your career, in your relationships, or in your personal goals, detachment can yield better outcomes. Ironically, detachment from outcomes can yield better outcomes. For example, in relationships, detachment helps you love without conditions, without trying to control the other person. At work, it allows you to pursue your goals with courage and without being burdened by the fear of failure or the fear of loss. As far as your personal goals and your personal growth, it lets you explore and evolve without being tied down to this rigid identity of who you should be or what should happen for you. Instead of being tied down, you just explore freely and you step into the uncertain with a certain detachment from outcomes, knowing that your self-esteem and your identity is tied to your efforts, your intentions, and your work instead of the results that you do or don't achieve. Now, ironically, when you let go of the results, better results tend to happen. It's like Lao Tzu said, "By letting go, it all gets done. The world is won by those who let it go. But when you try and try, the world is beyond the winning." And if you're still having trouble with this concept because you think letting go is an act of defeat, which I completely relate to, feel free to remember this other quote from Eckhart Tolle. "Sometimes letting things go is an act of far greater power than defending or hanging on." Every time I feel like letting go is a sign of defeat, I remind myself that maybe it takes more courage to let go than to cling and hang on. Now that we've covered that, let's go into the 5 action steps that we can start taking today to start practicing healthy detachment. The first is to focus on what you can control. There's a really good exercise called the circle of control exercise, where basically you take a piece of paper, you draw one circle, and then outside of that circle, you draw another circle, and you write all the things that are on your mind, generally today or yesterday or from a day-to-day perspective. All the things that are on your mind that you are worrying about, that you are thinking about, you put down on that piece of paper. And if you can control it, you put it in the inside circle, and if you cannot control it, you put it in the outside circle. And then you take out all the things that are in the outside circle and you cross them out, and then you look at the inside circle and you say to yourself, these are the things I'm going to focus on because these are the things that I control. So things like the results would go in the outside circle, but things like your work ethic and your discipline and your habits would go on the inside circle. And ironically, when you focus on things in the inside circle, a lot of the things in the outside circle magically start to get better. But when you obsess and worry and ruminate over the things in the outside circle, which you have no control over, you just end up wasting time and nothing gets done. The second is to embrace uncertainty. Nothing at all will ever be 100% certain. So we might as well just learn to deal with the uncertainty. None of us have any idea of what tomorrow has in store for us. Something crazy can happen, something completely normal can happen. But the fact of the matter is that we are stepping into uncertainty every single day because tomorrow is always uncertain. And so when you have trouble stepping into uncertainty, when you're trying to start something new and it is uncertain how it's going to turn out and you're scared, just remember that you're stepping into uncertainty no matter what. And understanding that you're stepping into uncertainty no matter what leaves you free to choose, okay, which uncertainty am I going to step into? Am I going to step into this uncertainty that kind of makes me excited as well? Or am I going to step into this uncertainty that is just boring and monotonous and I'm just doing the same thing over and over and over again and kind of gives me a sense of certainty, but at the end of the day, it's still uncertain because anything can always happen. The world is unpredictable and we're never going to have complete control over our circumstances. So knowing that we can more freely step into things that are uncertain, we can start taking action, we can start going on adventures, we can start exploring, and we can start evolving freely in ways that we wouldn't be able to if we were trying to desperately cling on to this false sense of certainty. Now, granted, some things are more uncertain than others, but understanding that everything has some degree of certainty can be helpful to overcome the fear of uncertainty because you're essentially facing it no matter what. The third is to release expectations, or at least reduce them. Expectations are not fact. They are just your opinion of how something should or should not happen. One of my favorite quotes from Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's business partner and overall a brilliant man, is the first rule of a happy life is low expectations. If you have unrealistic expectations, you're going to be miserable. And that is so true because if you think about somebody in a first world country, when their expectations are that their AC won't break and their AC breaks, they are now very, very frustrated. But somebody in a country that is not as well off, if they get clean water, they are incredibly excited. Now, granted, it's not a criticism of how we live here in a first world country like America. Rather, it's a cause for celebration that we can live such great lives. But the point that I'm trying to make is that our expectations determine how happy we are with our lives. And so if we can reduce our expectations or release them and just step into the uncertain and focus on what we are doing in the day-to-day, focus on enjoying the process, Focus on becoming more disciplined every single day. Focus on working harder every single day. Focus on having better intentions every single day. Focus on acting with intention more and more every single day. If we can focus on those things, if we can focus on the means rather than the ends, if we can focus on the today rather than what today is going to bring us in the future, then that brings us a lot more peace and a lot more calmness, because we're focusing on things that we can control today as opposed to things that we have no control over tomorrow. Fourth is to focus on processes and not results. I actually just kind of ended up talking about this in the third one, but if we focus on intention and we focus on enjoying the process and not the results themselves, ironically, the results come better when we do that as opposed to when we obsess over the results. And that makes practical sense. I mean, when we obsess over the results that we don't control, we are effectively doing nothing because we don't control the results. But when we focus on the things that make it more likely that those results will occur, that we do have control over, then the results will be more likely to occur. And the last one is to cultivate mindfulness. It's important that we practice staying present. Oftentimes, especially in this fast-paced world that we live in, and especially if you're watching this video, you're into productivity or personal development or high performance or whatever it is, you hold really high standards for yourself and you have really high goals for yourself. And you may even have a very strong need for achievement. And oftentimes those things can get in the way of us actually enjoying our limited time that we have on this earth. And so ironically, focusing on the processes of today rather than the achievements that we're trying to work towards makes those achievements more likely to occur. But at the same time, staying present allows us to just enjoy the present moment and even engage and go into a flow state that is very enjoyable and joyful. And so the better we get at being present, the happier and ironically, the more successful we will be in the future. Now, one way to stay present is to practice mindfulness, and one way to practice mindfulness is to meditate. I do about 10 to 15 minutes of meditation every single morning because I've noticed that when I do it, I feel more present throughout the day and I feel like I am seizing the day throughout the day, versus when I don't meditate, I feel like my head is kind of all over the place and I feel like I'm kind of chasing the day. So that is something that I personally found has worked for me, is to meditate in the morning specifically before I start my day. This helps me get in the right frame of mind, and in the days where I can't meditate today, I have to go downstairs and start working right away because I have so many things to do. When I have those days and I actually meditate, it tells my brain it's okay, it's going to be okay. You can take these 10 to 15 minutes to meditate and it will actually make it better because you'll be staying in the present moment. And every single time that I do it, I end up working way better and everything ends up going way better and I end up having a way better day. But it can be hard sometimes when you have a bunch of things to do to say, nope, I'm not going to do any of those things. I'm just going to stay here and I'm going to meditate and literally just breathe for 15 minutes. But what that also does, if you're focusing on your deep breathing, you're kind of setting up your breathing throughout the day instead of starting the day with this frantic style of breathing that you carry with you throughout the day. When you take the 15 minutes to focus on your breath and to slow down your breath, you kind of set your breath for the rest of the day. And that helps you have an overall more enjoyable day. Now, this difference between focusing on processes instead of results is very similar to a psychological phenomenon that was written about by a woman named Carol Dweck in her book Mindset, that talks about the difference between a growth mindset, which focuses on processes, and a fixed mindset, which focuses on results. If that interests you, feel free to check out the video that I made about that you can click right here. And as always, if you enjoy this kind of content and would like to see more of it, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the link in the description below to sign up for my weekly email newsletter where I send you content like this every Monday via email to get you started for the week. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video.